You clicked because you're tired of letting people disturb your peace. You want to be unshakable, to walk through life without others pulling your emotions like puppet strings. That's not weakness, that's power. You're not alone. From online trolls to everyday irritations, most people let others live rent-free in their minds. But what if you could change that? Not by escaping the world, but by mastering yourself. For over 2,000 years, Stoic philosophers like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca have passed down tools for emotional discipline. They didn't hide in caves, they ruled empires, faced exile, endured loss, and still kept calm. In this video, you'll explore 8 Stoic strategies that will help you stay calm-centered and beyond the reach of petty provocations. Each one is paired with metaphor, reflection, and ancient wisdom, translated into your modern life. If you value your mind more than your mood, stay. And if you'd like more calm, reflective videos like this where philosophy meets everyday strength, consider subscribing. It's a quiet click, but it tells the algorithm you prefer depth over drama. There's a place inside you no one else can enter. No insult reaches it. No chaos touches it. No person, no matter how cruel, can breach it, unless you open the gates yourself. The Stoics called this your inner citadel. It's the seat of your reason, your values, your peace, and it's yours alone. You often think someone makes you angry. They said something hurtful. They cut you off. They disrespected you in front of others. But pause here. Did they truly cause your anger? Or did you permit it? It's not things that disturb us, Epictetus wrote, but our judgments about them. That one line rewires everything. Anger doesn't come from what happens. It comes from what you tell yourself about what happens. The insult isn't the dagger, your belief that it shouldn't have happened, that it means something about you, that it must be corrected immediately. That's what wounds you. That's what fuels the fire. The castle metaphor: picture a stone fortress on a mountain peak. Storms rage below, armies march across valleys, but inside that citadel, a single candle glows undisturbed. The winds howl, but they never reach the flame. Your mind is that flame. People can scream, provoke attack, but unless you open the windows, the storm stays outside. You don't control other people. You control whether you give them access to your emotional home. So how do you do this in real life? Start small. Today, when someone says something irritating, don't rush to interpret. Don't tell yourself a story. Just pause, breathe, label the event without judgment. This is noise. This is an opinion. This is not mine. You reclaim the citadel by slowing the moment between stimulus and response. In that moment lives your freedom. It's not easy. Your reflex might scream, but that was wrong. I can't let them get away with that. But remember, your peace isn't about letting them win. It's about you not losing control of your own mind. Epictetus said, "Who then is invincible? The one who cannot be upset by anything outside their own choice." You don't need to win arguments. You don't need to correct every injustice in real time. You need to protect your peace, like it's sacred, because it is. A reflective question. What would change in your life if no one could make you angry? Unless you allowed it, imagine that. The freedom, the lightness. You still respond when needed, but never in a way that compromises your core. This is emotional sovereignty. This is the Stoic way. Let them yell, let them provoke. You stay in the citadel. You're walking down the street, someone bumps into you, and mutters something rude. What do you do? For most, the reaction is instant anger, confrontation, maybe even escalation. But what if, just for a breath, you paused? Not to suppress, not to pretend, but to observe. That pause, that tiny space between the event and your response, that's where your power lives. The greatest remedy for anger is delay, wrote Seneca. He wasn't being poetic, he was being surgical. Anger is fast, it's impulsive, it's loud. Wisdom is slow, it's deliberate. It watches before it speaks. When you react instantly, you're often not you. You're a bundle of past wounds, pride, fear, and adrenaline. But when you pause even for a moment, you return to yourself. The metaphor, the still surface of water. Imagine a lake on a windless morning. Its surface is glass. If you toss a pebble in, you see the ripples clearly. Now imagine a stormy sea, constant waves, violent winds. If someone throws in a stone, would you notice? Would you even know it happened? That's what it's like trying to think clearly when you're emotional. You can't see, you can't reflect, you only react. But when you pause, you become the still water. Every action becomes a choice, not a reflex. So how can you build this habit? Step 1, name the moment. When anger stirs, say internally, "This is irritation." Naming diffuses intensity. It creates a gap between you and the emotion. Step 2, breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth, slowly. Science confirms what the Stoics knew intuitively. Your breath is the remote control for your nervous system. Step 3, wait. Even 5 seconds is enough. Buy time. Let the wave pass. Don't reply to the message right away. Don't respond in the meeting immediately. Let the pulse settle. What you say after the pause will be different, wiser, clearer, more aligned with who you truly want to be. If a person gave away your body to some passerby, you'd be furious, said Epictetus, yet you hand over your mind to anyone who comes along and insults you. Aren't you ashamed? It sounds harsh, but it's a call to dignity. You are not obligated to act on every feeling. You are not required to attend every argument you're invited to. In the pause, you are free. And here's the quiet truth. Most of what angers you isn't worth your energy. It's momentary, petty, forgettable. But your response, that's what lasts. A reflective question: how many regrets in your life were born from things said in moments you could have paused? Now ask yourself, what kind of peace could you create if your new habit was delay? The next time the world presses your buttons, do nothing just yet. Let the pressure build and pass. Let others rush. You breathe, because in a world of noise, stillness is strength, and silence. Sometimes silence is the loudest power you can hold. You're standing in line. Someone cuts in front of you. A car swerves across your lane. Your coworker makes a passive-aggressive comment in the meeting. The anger rises, hot and immediate. But before you act, ask yourself this: is this the battle I want to fight? Or is this the one that pulls me away from the battle that actually matters? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." He didn't just mean strength in stillness, he meant strength in focus. Because attention is limited, energy is limited, and every petty irritation you chase steals from your bigger mission. The metaphor: ants on a picnic blanket. Imagine you're at a picnic in a beautiful meadow. The sun is out, the food is warm. Your favorite people are around you, but then you see ants crawling across the edge of the blanket. Do you flip the table, shout at the ants, or do you calmly brush them away and return to the feast? Most of what angers you in life is ants. Small irritations that feel large in the moment, but aren't worth tipping over your peace. Anger often comes from assigning too much importance to things that don't deserve it. You get cut off in traffic and take it personally. You hear a stranger's opinion online and feel attacked. You let minor disrespect feel like a moral emergency. But in the grand scale of your life, your purpose, your health, your relationships, does it matter? Does it change your mission? Usually, no. How the Stoics trained. This Marcus Aurelius used a technique we now call the view from above. He imagined looking down at himself from a high place, from the clouds, or even the stars. From that height, insults became whispers, offenses became specks, This wasn't detachment for the sake of apathy, it was perspective as a shield. A way to shrink what doesn't matter and return to what does. Try this next time. When you feel provoked mentally, zoom out. Imagine the scene from above yourself, the other person, the context, the day, the year. Ask, will this still matter tomorrow, next week, in 10 years? And if you still feel like acting, ask yourself why. Is it pride, ego, fear of seeming weak? That's not Stoicism. That's emotional outsourcing. The Stoic chooses action aligned with virtue, not with revenge. They pick battles that match their values, not their triggers. Seneca said, "He who angers you conquers you." But here's the twist: he doesn't mean the other person. He means the version of yourself that gets hijacked by emotion. That part of you wins, unless you choose differently. A reflective question: what kind of person do you want to be remembered? As someone who reacts to every slight, or someone who stayed committed to something bigger? Because every time you skip a small battle, you train your focus for the real ones, the ones that matter, the ones that define you. So next time someone tries to bait you into anger, let them play their game. You're playing a longer one. There's a strange thing that happens when someone offends you. You think they did something to you, but often the sting comes from something inside you, their words. Poke a bruise that was already there. They don't create the wound, they expose it. Epictetus said, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. This is not victim blaming, it's radical responsibility. Because when you accept that no one defines you, you take back your power. You stop being a mirror for their behavior. And instead, you become a mirror for your own truth. The metaphor, the mirror and the mud. Imagine someone throws mud at a mirror. If the mirror is dirty, the mud sticks and spreads. If the mirror is clean, the mud slides off. You are the mirror. Others will throw what they will, judgment, insults, blame. But how much of it sticks depends on how clear you are within yourself. Their behavior reflects them, but how you interpret it, that reflects you. We all carry insecurities. When someone criticizes your work, your parenting, your intelligence, it hurts most if part of you already fears it might be true. Their insult hits a fracture, but that fracture didn't start with them. This is where Stoicism becomes healing. Instead of defending your ego, you examine your reaction. You ask, why does this bother me? What part of me is still unsure, unhealed, or seeking approval? The answer isn't to shut down or numb yourself. It's to become intimate with your values, to know deeply what matters and what doesn't. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Reject your sense of injury, and the injury itself disappears." That line isn't about denial, it's about reframing. If someone calls you selfish and you know you acted from love, why accept their label? If someone mocks your dreams but you're building something meaningful, why grant them authority? You are the author of your identity, not them. A practical application: value anchoring. Next time you feel insulted, pause and ask, what are they really saying and why does it hurt? Then ask, what do I know to be true about myself in this area? Write it down if you need to. Keep a values journal. Anchor yourself. Because when your roots are deep, the winds don't shake you. This isn't about ego, it's about clarity. When you know who you are, you don't need to prove it to strangers. Their opinion doesn't change your path. It simply reveals theirs. Seneca said it simply, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. When someone bothers you, the suffering usually comes not from their words, but from the story you start telling yourself afterward. You turn a comment into a character judgment, a glance into a verdict, and in doing so, you give away your peace. But with Stoic awareness, you pause that spiral. You say, this is not about me, or even if it is, it does not define me, and you move on. A reflective question. When someone bothers you, are they really the problem, or are they just showing you where you're still not free? Let them reflect what they will. Let them project what they need to. You stay rooted, clear, free. It's easy to judge others when they're rude, selfish, impatient, or careless. It's easy to think I would never do that. But pause. Breathe. Be honest with yourself. Haven't you? Seneca reminds us. When you are angry, consider how many times you have done the same thing. It's not an excuse for bad behavior. It's a lens, a reminder of our shared humanity. You've snapped at someone because you were tired. You've overlooked someone's feelings in a rush. You've made a wrong assumption. You've acted out of fear, stress, or ego. So have they. So has everyone. And when you realize that, anger softens into understanding. The metaphor, the foggy mirror. Imagine you're looking at someone through a fogged-up mirror. Their flaws look bigger, distorted, exaggerated. But when you wipe the glass clean with empathy, you see them more clearly. You see yourself in them. Every person who annoys you is holding up a mirror, sometimes reflecting your own past, sometimes revealing what you fear becoming, sometimes simply reminding you of your own imperfection. When you react with anger, you add more fog. When you respond with empathy, the mirror clears. This doesn't mean tolerating abuse or injustice. It means shifting your internal response, choosing peace where the world expects fire, choosing compassion not for their sake but for your own liberation. Because to walk through life constantly irritated by others is a form of imprisonment, but to recognize yourself in others, that is the first key to emotional freedom. Let's be clear, empathy is not weakness. It's one of the strongest Stoic tools. Marcus Aurelius, despite being emperor, reminded himself daily, when you wake up, prepare to meet the meddling, the ungrateful, the arrogant, the deceitful. And then he added, they are like this because they do not know good from evil. He didn't say be angry. He said understand. A practical shift that could have been me. Next time someone cuts you off in traffic, instead of exploding, say, that could have been me on a worse day. Next time someone forgets to text back, speaks harshly, or acts selfish, say, I've done something similar. This doesn't excuse them. It just releases you from being ruled by them. You become the witness, not the reactor. You trade blame for insight, and that shift changes everything. It also builds patience, because the more you see others clearly, the more you see your own past with grace. You remember what it was like to be younger, less aware, more reactive, more fragile. You remember all the mistakes you've outgrown and how you wish others had treated you during them. Be that person now, not for them, for you. Epictetus asked, do you wish to be praised by a man who curses himself 3 times every hour? That sharp line reminds us that others often act from inner chaos, from pain, from their own self-loathing. It's not about you. It never was. So when someone's actions trigger you, ask, is this about me or is this just where they are in their journey? A reflective question. If you could see every person as a version of yourself, struggling, trying, failing, learning, how differently would you move through the world? You've been that person. They are that person now. Let it humble you. Let it soften you. Let it free you. Every time you respond with anger, you're not just reacting. You're practicing. You're rehearsing how you'll respond next time and the next, until eventually it becomes who you are. Epictetus wrote, every habit and faculty is preserved and increased by its corresponding actions. Respond with frustration often enough, and you become frustrated more easily. React with peace more often, and peace becomes your default. This is the Stoic view of habit as destiny, not in a mystical sense, but in a deeply practical one. Every moment is training. Every decision is shaping you. And the question is simple. Who are you rehearsing to become? The metaphor, the sculptor and the stone. Imagine your mind as a block of marble. With every reaction, you chip away at it, slowly carving a form. If you react in anger, you carve sharp, jagged lines. If you respond with patience, you smooth the surface. You are the sculptor, but you're also the stone. Each day you are creating the future you, not in some abstract way, but in the patterns of your behavior, your default emotional settings, your go-to thoughts. Think about the people you admire, the ones who stay calm in crisis, who speak with grace, who don't crumble under pressure. They weren't born that way. They practiced. They rehearsed those qualities in moments when it would have been easier to snap, to yell, to rage. You can do the same. Every irritating person is offering you a stage to rehearse composure. Every annoying comment is an invitation to become who you claim to want to be. Marcus Aurelius asked himself daily, "What is your vocation to be a good person?" Then he added, "And how is that done? By practicing the qualities that make a good person." So when someone pushes your buttons, ask, "Is this a chance to defend my pride or to practice my peace?" Because your response is not just about this moment. It's about every moment that follows. It's about who you're becoming. Practical application, repetition becomes reflex. The next time you feel anger rising, tell yourself, "This is training." Literally say it out loud if needed, because it reframes the experience. It turns a bad day into a mental gym, a rude comment into an emotional push-up. You're not suppressing how you feel. You're redirecting the energy into practice. You're using the moment, not losing to it. It also helps to visualize. Think of yourself as an actor in a rehearsal room, not a courtroom. There's no verdict, just preparation, just progress. This shift in mindset does something remarkable. You stop seeing the world as full of enemies or threats. You start seeing it as a training ground, a dojo for the mind. Every interaction, a chance to refine your character. And over time, the reflex changes. You don't try to stay calm, you simply are. You don't force a measured response, it just arises. That's not luck. That's not personality, that's rehearsal. Seneca said, "Anger always outlasts hurt. Better to take the blow than to retaliate." Each time you take the blow without losing yourself, you're rehearsing your higher self. You're rehearsing virtue, and you're making it stronger. A reflective question. If every response becomes part of who you're becoming, who are you training to be today? Because even in the small moments, the sighs, the eye rolls, the quiet resentment, you're either rehearsing chaos or rehearsing calm. Choose wisely. You're always becoming something. You will meet people who insult you, underestimate you, belittle you. They'll gossip behind your back, interrupt you mid-sentence, or roll their eyes while you speak. Your instinct might scream, "Say something, prove something, fight back." But what if you didn't? What if instead of shrinking to meet them in the dirt, you rose above quietly, powerfully, without a word? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." In a world obsessed with clapbacks, comebacks, and getting the last word, Stoicism offers a radically different response: restraint, dignity, stillness, not because you're afraid, but because you've outgrown the need to react to smallness with smallness. The metaphor of the mountain and the wind. Picture a tall, ancient mountain. The wind howls around it, throwing snow, shouting with force. But the mountain never shouts back. It doesn't bend. It doesn't flinch. It simply stands, silent, immovable. Not because it can't fight, but because it doesn't need to. Let them be the wind. You be the mountain. When someone tries to get under your skin, what they're really doing is trying to pull you down to their level. Not out of strategy, but because they don't know another way to be seen, to feel powerful, to get attention. But your job isn't to teach them that in that moment. Your job is to protect your peace. Because every time you respond with anger, you hand them the keys to your mind. Every time you match their tone, you lose altitude. But when you stay calm, you make their noise echo back on itself. Epictetus advised, if someone speaks ill of you, instead of defending yourself, Say, he obviously doesn't know me very well, otherwise he'd have said more. That's not sarcasm. It's clarity. It's the refusal to be baited. It's the quiet strength that says, I know who I am. I don't need to shout it. Practice the art of the inner smile. Next time someone is being passive-aggressive, critical, or dramatic, don't rise to it. Instead, smile not outwardly, but inwardly. A subtle, knowing smile. It says, I see what this is, but I will not make it mine. It's not fake kindness, it's internal leadership. You're choosing not to let small people make you small. And here's the gift. When you stay calm in the face of disrespect, you often disarm the other person, not by overpowering them, but by being unaffected. They can't play their game if you refuse to sit at the table. You create space for them to reflect, for you to stay grounded, even if they never change. You already won, because you didn't lose yourself trying to fight them. Seneca wrote, "To be provoked is to be conquered." Let that line echo in your mind the next time someone tries to provoke you. They want you to engage, to validate their chaos with your energy. But you're not here to validate noise. You're here to preserve your clarity. A reflective question. If you rose above every petty insult, every shallow dig, what kind of presence would you carry through the world? Let them gossip, let them snark, let them roll their eyes. You stay big, because you've got bigger things to build, because your calm is more valuable than their chaos. You can meditate every morning. You can read every Stoic book. You can practice patience, grace, and restraint. And still someone will irritate you. Still someone will be rude. Still, life will push against your calm. The wind will always blow. The mistake isn't in getting caught off guard. The mistake is believing it shouldn't happen at all. Epictetus warned, don't hope that events will turn out the way you want. Instead, welcome events in whichever way they happen. This is the path to peace. Expecting the world to be gentle is like expecting the wind to stop for your walk. It won't. But you can dress for the weather. You can prepare your mind, even if you can't predict the storm. The metaphor, the sailor and the sea. A wise sailor doesn't curse the sea for being rough. They study the patterns, they adjust their sails. They don't try to change the wind. They learn how to move with it. That's the Stoic way. You don't demand life be easy. You train yourself to remain steady when it's not. Because the wind isn't personal. Neither are the people who irritate you. They are simply part of the weather part of nature, doing what it does. Here's the secret to lasting peace. Don't build your calm on the absence of conflict. Build it to withstand conflict. That way, when someone's tone is sharp, when traffic is unbearable, when plans fall apart, you don't break. You bend, you breathe, you adjust. You already knew the wind was coming. You were ready. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Today I shall meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, and unsocial." He wasn't being pessimistic. He was being prepared. Prepared not to react with surprise, but with grace, with calm. When you start each day expecting the world to be imperfect, you stop being disappointed when it is, and you start being stronger because of it. A daily ritual, premeditatio malorum. This was a practice used by Stoics like Seneca, and Marcus translated as the premeditation of evils. They would imagine the day ahead, the delays, the interruptions, the irritations, and they'd rehearse their response in advance. So when the difficulty arrived, it didn't shock them. They'd already met it once before in the mind. You can do the same. Each morning ask what might go wrong today, and how will I remain calm when it does? You're not being negative. You're becoming resilient. People will be people. Some will be kind, some will be cruel, but your peace, that's your project. Don't hand it over to strangers. Don't build it on the sand of circumstances. Build it like a lighthouse rooted, bright, untouched by the waves. As Epictetus said, you may not control the weather, but you can control the ship. Let the wind blow, let others stumble. You hold the wheel, you set your course. A reflective question. If you stopped expecting peace from the outside and started creating it from within, how much lighter would life feel? Because the wind isn't going anywhere, but neither are you. And now, you're anchored. You've made it to the end. Not just of this video, but of a quiet journey inward, not one of escape, but of return, back to the only place where peace was ever truly possible within. You began by asking how to stop being bothered by others, how to never let their words, their moods, their chaos disturb your calm. Now you know it's not about changing them, it's about reclaiming yourself. Marcus Aurelius called this the inner fortress, the mind that no insult, no pain, no person could shake. He wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." The world will still challenge you. The wind will still blow. People will still disappoint, irritate, provoke. But now you don't meet them with fire. You meet them with reflection. You respond with practice, not panic. With principle, not pride. With clarity, not noise. The cost of forgetting. But if you don't remember these lessons, if you fall back into reaction, into ego, into old patterns, what happens? Stress returns, regret creeps back in. You hand your peace to people who don't even know your story. You become a mirror again instead of a mountain. That's the price of forgetting. What? Now don't try to master all 8 strategies at once. Instead, choose one. One phrase, one question, one metaphor that stuck with you. Carry it with you today. Use it. Let it anchor you. You may when the tension rises. You don't need to be perfect. You only need to be practicing. And if this space, this quiet corner of philosophy, offered something useful to you today, consider subscribing. Not because I asked, but because your mind deserves more places like this. Calm spaces, thoughtful spaces, spaces that don't pull you into noise but call you back to yourself. Let others shout, let them rush. You move slowly, you move inward, because now you've returned to the fortress.